Ladies and gentlemen, we're going down to the trenches. Arguably the most important place to predict future running back production is going to be the offensive line. And here we are going to be looking at the 10 worst offensive lines going into this next season. Now, with that being said, I am not an offensive line expert. I wish I was. I wish I could talk about every single one of these tackles, every single one of these guards, every single one of these centers in depth. But sadly, I would be lying to you if I said I could. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to scour the internet, look at every single offensive line rankings list I can find. I'm going to combine them into an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to average all the list down to have one concentrated list. And we're going to be talking about the bottom 10 offensive line according to experts all across the internet. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. They have the Dolphins as the 10th worst offensive line. To be honest with you, at this part of the list, not too concerned, right? We're going to be concerned when we get to the bottom 5, the bottom 3. Dolphins, I mean, you don't really have anybody you're excited about anyway. You got Mostert, and you got Jeff Wilson, you have Devon Achane. I mean, Mostert hasn't been a top 24 running back for 3 straight seasons now, and the man's 31. Jeff Wilson hasn't been a top 24 running back ever. Devon Achane is a running back that weighs less than 190 pounds. I mean, if you look at him in our running back prospect model, he essentially just comps to busts like Kenneth Dixon, like Devin Singletary, Buck Allen, Raquel Armstead. The only hit that you have in our model for Devon Achane is Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, a massive long shot for Achane to turn into him. So in reality, I'm not too excited about any of these Miami Dolphins running backs. If I had to pick one, I'm going to go Devon Achane because he would be the receiving down back in this offense. We know Tua isn't a super mobile quarterback. Generally, those quarterbacks that are going to be pocket passing options are willing to check the ball down to their backs, especially if the pocket collapses, which if the Dolphins have a bad offensive line, maybe often. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on where you are drafting Devon Achane, right? I mean, if we're going to go over and look at where he's going currently in ESPN drafts, there he is the running back 51. He has an ADP of 168. And at that price point, I'm honestly fine with it. But if you're going to go over and look at where he's going in underdog drafts at an ADP of 118 as the running back 39, there's no way in hell I can take Devon Achane at that price. If we're looking at the player props that you have on Underdog for these backs, one of my favorite props on the season is actually going to be looking at Jeff Wilson for fewer than 550 rushing yards. The reason being is 1, I don't think Jeff Wilson's that good. 2, I don't think this offensive line is that good. And 3, I think the Miami Dolphins are a prime candidate to bring in another running back, whether that's Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, hell, even Dalvin Cook. So I'm betting against these running backs in general. Now, going over to our next team, we're going to have the Jets. Now, with the Jets, expectations are pretty high going into this next year for the right reason, right? I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers coming in. You have right now on Underdog, Garrett Wilson getting drafted as the wide receiver 8 in these drafts. You have Breece Hall going as the running back 10. And honestly, I think it's kind of a fair price point, especially if you're going to be looking at Breece Hall, where this was the running back 8 from a points per game perspective this past season. I think we naturally assume that you have a improved offense on the whole with Aaron Rodgers coming in. With Breece Hall, you should be getting a discount given the fact that this is a running back coming off a torn ACL. But all reports are saying he's probably going to be good to go by the time that we get to the start of the season. Hell, I mean, last week in practice, he hit 23 miles per hour. So yeah, I'm completely fine with the Breece Hall price point, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, if you're looking at him in underdog drafts, there he's the running back 10. He has an ADP of 30. If you're going to be going over and looking at what you have in ESPN drafts, he is the running back 12 with an ADP of 32. So maybe you're a little bit more intrigued in your regular ESPN league. Now, going over to our next team, we're going to be looking at the Buffalo Bills. Now, with the Bills, the offensive line isn't going to be too much of a concern considering the fact that you do have an elite level quarterback there with Josh Allen, right? I mean, we don't necessarily have to sit here and say this offense is going to crater by any means, but we do have to think about what this means for the 2 backs in this backfield. James Cook, the receiving down back, I honestly don't really expect to be affected much. Not really seeing a large role in first and second down. He is going to be that receiving down option and hopefully can rack up his volume as a pass catcher. Damian Harris, on the other hand, is a running back that needs to be involved as a first and second down running back, needs to have touchdown upside if he is going to make things work. So how I'm expecting the split to be in this backfield is Damien Harris, the first and second down guy, James Cook, the third down guy. And if we're looking at the underdog player props with that expectation, they have Damien Harris at 550 rushing yards, whereas they have James Cook at 600 rushing yards. So given the concerns about the offensive line, given the usage of these backs, also the fact that James Cook has a BMI under 28, I wouldn't mind at all of taking the fewer than 600 rushing yards on James Cook going into this next year. I mean, in underdog drafts right now, James Cook does seem like he's a very reasonable price point. He's going as the running back 31. He has an ADP of 95. If you're looking at the other players in that range, hell, he's being drafted right after Michael Thomas. He's being drafted right before Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams. So I've actually been drafting a decent amount of James Cook there, even if I would take the fewer than 600 rushing yards. But of course, if y'all want to check out any of those player props, or if you want to get into a draft with us, y'all know we are drafting literally every single day on the live stream, not missing a single day until 2024. You can find the link to check out those player props and get into a draft down in the description and the comment section. It's going to be Underdog Fantasy, where they're all best ball drafts. So no time commitment at all during the year. That's how I drafted 700 teams and won $150,000 last season. Not meant to replace your main fantasy football league, just meant to have some fun on the side. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com, and it's available in damn near every state. You can see all the states here. But going over to our next team, we're going to be looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't want to speak on this too much, right? We already know the Bucs are going to be horrible. The Las Vegas win totals that you have are about 6.5 wins for the Bucs this next season. It looks like you have minus 135, minus 145 on the under. So yeah, everybody's taking the Bucs to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. Rachaad White, I don't really like his price point in ESPN drafts, where there he's the running back 19 with an ADP of 53. In underdog drafts, he is the running back 25 with an ADP of 82. So yeah, I'm kind of fine drafting him on underdog just because he's essentially free. He's also the receiving down back, right? You're not necessarily seeing as much concerns with the receiving down back as you would a first and second down option. Now, team 6, the New York Giants with Saquon Barkley, is a little concerning for me because Saquon Barkley at this point, primarily with the discount we are getting with the franchise tag concerns, is my most drafted or one of my most drafted running backs in fantasy this year. Crazy that he was going at the 2-3 turn in these drafts, and we were able to scoop him up everywhere. Now, I am concerned to see this offensive line ranking here for the New York Giants. Even with the bad O-line last year, Saquon Barkley was the running back 5 from a points per game perspective. Not going to be too concerned with Saquon Barkley because it's a running back that has that involvement as a pass catcher. So if you're seeing a generalized trend here, if you are relying on a running back as a first and second down option in a bad offense behind a bad offensive line, you should probably be concerned. But if the man can catch passes, I'm okay with still drafting him, thinking that he can overcome that offensive line play. Going to be very interested to see where Saquon Barkley ends up in these drafts. Like I said, we've just been drafting him nonstop in the middle to the end of the second round in those underdog drafts. I wonder if he moves up to being a first round selection as he deserves now. Now, going over to our next team, we're going to be looking at the Washington Commanders, where you have Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. Brian Robinson last season averaging 17 carries per game. Antonio Gibson down at 9.9, but Brian Robinson only 1 target per game, whereas Antonio Gibson at 3.87. So generally, we are seeing Brian Robinson as the first and second down back, Antonio Gibson as the pass catcher. And going back to what we were discussing previously, I want to be targeting the passing down running backs in bad offenses behind bad offensive lines. So I would preferably be going after Antonio Gibson where I can, especially if we're going to look at their price, particularly in your regular redraft formats. There, Antonio Gibson has an ADP of the running back 38. He is pick 130. Whereas Brian Robinson is actually the running back 35 with an ADP of 116. Now, it's going to be a little bit different in underdog drafts, where you actually have Brian Robinson at a pretty big discount in underdog formats as the running back 37, ADP 112, where you're having to pay up with Antonio Gibson as the running back 32, ADP 99. So how I'll take this information is you're probably better off taking Brian Robinson in that underdog draft if you're going to get him at a severe discount in round 11. Whereas if you were looking at Antonio Gibson in your regular redraft leagues, that's going to be the guy that you want to target, particularly behind a bad offensive line with his receiving down skill set, plus the departure of J.D. McKissic. But a running back that I have been drafting way too much, looks like he is going to be behind a bad offensive line with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Travis Etienne. They're coming in here at 4th. Now, if we're looking at Las Vegas win totals going into this next season, it does look like the Jacksonville Jaguars are projected to be able to overcome this, obviously, on the back of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's going to be the main reason why the Jags look to be a playoff team, look to be a real contending team this next season. But nonetheless, with Etienne, I'm still fine with him at cost in underdog drafts. There, Travis Etienne currently is going in the middle of round 4. Travis Etienne's the running back 14. Now, if you're looking at your regular redraft leagues, however, Travis Etienne's the running back 10. There he is going ahead of someone like Breece Hall. There he's going ahead of someone like Ramondre Stevenson. And you're having to take him right after Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb. So it looks like underdog drafters kind of understand this with Etienne, that you probably should be going out of your way and avoiding him. But I think that we can still draft them in the middle of round 4. We just have to be realistic with the concerns. I mean, if you're going to be looking at his player props right now, they do have him at 6.5 rushing touchdowns and 950.5 rushing yards. But like I said, you can draft him in round 4. I'm drafting him in round 4. I think it's fine. Now, our next team, the Arizona Cardinals. This is why James Conner is going so low in drafts, ladies and gentlemen. The Cardinals right now have an over-under for their wins this next season at 4.5. Yes, 4.5. Most people are expecting the Cardinals to be a very bad team this next year. And that is why you can't just rush into James Conner. Because I understand on the surface, it looks like James Conner is a phenomenal selection. I mean, he's incredibly cheap in underdog drafts, where there James Conner currently is going as a running back 3. He's going next to someone like Elijah Moore, and he is the running back 26. Now, if you're looking at your regular redraft formats, James Conner's the running back 21. There he's going ahead of Isaiah Pacheco, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, running backs that are on good teams, running backs that are running behind good offensive lines. I'm probably fine taking him where he goes in underdog drafts, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a running back that saw an 11% team target share last year. He saw a 55% market share number rushing the football, and he has back-to-back seasons finishing as a top 12 option in fantasy. But it really comes down to how bad this team's going to be, how bad this offensive line is, the health of Kyler Murray. James Conner's a solid running back 3, but don't draft him as a running back 2. Now, going over to our next guy, Cam Akers in the Los Angeles Rams offense is a situation I've been a little bit worried about this next season. Now, Cam Akers has skyrocketed up underdog drafts. I mean, there he is currently going as the running back 21 with an ADP of 65. Whereas if you're looking at your ESPN drafts, there he's going as the running back 26 with an ADP of 80. Now, the player prop on Cam Akers is going to be 6.5 rushing touchdowns, 750 rushing yards. Now, with Akers, the main concern I have is the overall situation he'll be in this next season. The Rams right now, for their over-under, 6.5 wins. Las Vegas sportsbooks are telling us the Rams will be a borderline bottom 5 team this next season. Cam Akers did catch the ball at Florida State. That's something that I loved in his prospect profile back in the day. But at the same time, this is a running back that hasn't really caught the ball at the NFL level. Now, that may change, but as it stands, I'm personally not drafting a lot of Akers, at least on underdog. I mean, it's kind of the exact opposite situation of James Conner, right? Like, I think Akers, if you're grabbing him as your running back 3 in your regular redraft format, I'm all about it. But given the offensive concerns, given the offensive line concerns, probably not taking him as a mid running back 2. Now, our last team that we have here, the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry. Tennessee has lost pretty much their entire offensive line. The Tennessee Titans right now are currently sitting at 7.5 for the over-under on their wins this next season. Derrick Henry has two massive, massive red flags. One, his age. If you look historically, at this age, running backs that comp to Derrick Henry fall off. Very rarely are you seeing running backs going into their age 30 season continuing to perform as normal. On top of this, we have overall offensive concerns. Now, those concerns are a little bit lessened with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins coming over means more first downs, means more sustained drives, means more red zone opportunities, which means more rushing touchdowns for Derrick Henry. But at the same time, if this Tennessee Titans offensive line is supposed to be this bad, where if I'm looking at every site that we grabbed, they had the Titans the 32nd worst, the 32nd, 32nd, 32nd. The only site that did not have the Tennessee Titans as the worst offensive line in football was Fantasy Pros, and they had them at 26. They had them as, a bottom 6 line. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not telling you not to draft Derrick Henry. I'm telling you to just be smart about where you take him. Underdog right now has his player prop as the highest rushing mark of anybody in fantasy this year. They have him at 1,200 rushing yards. In underdog drafts, he goes at the end of the second, the beginning of the third round. Whereas in your regular redraft formats, he's the running back 4. He's going at the end of round 1. Do not take Derrick Henry round 1 this year. I understand he is crushed for 3 straight seasons now. I understand he is the guy. I understand he's an outlier. But with the amount of red flags that you have with this profile, he's a strong pick in underdog drafts at the 2-3 turn. Just don't take him round 1. But I think that's all we have for this video. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, if you want to go check out any of those player props on Underdog, if you want to get into a draft with us, which we're doing every single day on the live stream, you can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the comment section in the description of this video. If you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com, and it's available in damn near every state. You can see the map here. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you, and really hope I get to draft with you on the live stream later today.